Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Beer Blather 241. The best revenge is victory. Well, as you can see from my background here, I'm on the road again, and I didn't have a lot of time to write. I know that Thomas is going to be very happy about that. But there are two things I wanted to say before we start. Uno, on the 532nd anniversary of the arrival of Don Cristóbal Colón, Almirante de la Mar Océano, we'd like to honor the great captain upon whose discovery our American civilization was founded and thrived. To the latter-day indigenists who'd like to detract from his massive achievement, tough. Especially to idiots just arrived from Latvia who think that bashing those who created the very society whose fruits they now enjoy, like Claudia, darling, the ridiculous retired terrorist president of Mexico. Yada, 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 original peoples, bite me. After nearly 4 years of misery, that's number two, the US approaches elections that may finally give our freedom-loving people a break. Just as Ukrainians move closer to pushing the drunken Orcs out of their homes as the war reaches Putin's entourage, and just as Israel moves closer to erasing the scourge of terrorism from their neighborhood. Time to go for the head of the snake. What can I say? This is a live blather, and we'll have to wait until it's done to tell you what it is all about. In November, save America from the clutches of retarded lowlifes and put the fascists out. This is Saul Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest city in America. And the first one, you know that the Spaniards built this city, founded this city less than 40 years after Columbus's arrival. And it's been here since 1521. There's 503 years. No other city in America, in the US, comes close to this. Now, in the Americas, there are older cities, but this one is the older city in North America. Not in North America, that includes Mexico, in the US. So, from St. Augustine, Florida, and right next to me, Thomas Victor with a beard that is now putting me to shame, from Mexifornia, the land of fruits and nuts and flakes, and lately the land of President Trump's latest rally. 100,000 people went to see him speak in California. And he referred to your governor Newsom. He actually spoke of Newsom. I could have cracked up. So, how is life under Newsom, Thomas?
Well, it's pretty ironic. I'm watching a Korean series about a young woman and her two siblings. They're adults living with their parents. The father never speaks. He's a cabinet maker. The mother doesn't like the children because none of them are married and have grandchildren yet. And this young woman has always felt like an outsider in the world. And she ends up making friends with the father's assistant cabinet maker, and eventually she just starts saying whatever's on her mind, and like she's a 30-ish woman, so 30 years of pent-up angst, weirdness, it's all coming without any she doesn't feel embarrassed by any of it. She has no inhibitions. She's just saying what she wants to everybody. And here in California, you can't do that because I mean, California is so much more repressive than East Asian culture, that there's things that if you said here once, you would lose your job, you would have people coming to your house and threatening to murder you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not even done in service of something great. It's being done in service of something horrific. I think 600,000 Californians per year are leaving the state, and the country's revenue is in free fall now because more and more companies are
Oh,
leaving the state.
have you seen the list of those companies? It's amazing.
Exactly. And here's our governor telling us that everything is fine. It's like, you know what it's like? The Venezuelan gangs have congregated in Aurora, Colorado, and they're taking over. There was a woman who Breitbart interviewed, and she said that this is a criminal society that was imported whole. They have their own lockpicks, they have their own plumbers, they have their own air conditioning experts, they have everything, and they're completely taking over these apartment complexes. And if you don't leave, what they'll do is they'll bring motorcycles into the apartments beside you or under you or above you, and they'll rev them all night. Harley Davidsons with no exhaust pipes. So they fill your apartment with exhaust from motorcycles. And the police and the governor, they're all saying none of this is happening. There's now hundreds of videos that show all of this happening. And
Right.
and here's the state saying you're crazy, none of this is happening. So that's basically California as well. I happen to be in it's not a TIFF, but it's a I'm having a conversation with a code enforcement officer, and it turns out he's the only one in the city. And the way he determines how the city code is interpreted is law. And he's making a request.
Yeah, and he interprets it out of his cojones.
Well, he's made a demand that I think is absolutely unreasonable. And so he's coming. I have a few weeks left, and I'm not going to do what he's asking me to do, but instead I'm going to give him a tour of my property and show him that he's incorrect. In the end, if I have no other choice, I'll do what he asked me to do. But it's a cordial exchange. He told me that the fact that I called him and spoke to him was a great sign. And I think he just wants his butt kissed.
Yeah, you have to call him Excellency.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
Because what he's
Kiss the
demanding
ring.
is it's completely unreasonable, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I've heard about people having endless disputes with a code officer. I'm not going to get into a dispute with this guy because, I mean, I've tried to contact lawyers.
It's cheaper to do whatever the crap he wants and let him walk into the sunset. But
Well, I've
you
tried to contact
shouldn't be in that position, though.
I've contacted 5 local property lawyers, and not one has responded to me. So in the end, if it comes down to it, then I'll do what he wants me to do. But it's an amazing, like with everything else that's happening, and the fact that my property has been this way since 2021, and almost 4 years later, the code officer says, now you have to change everything. You have to waste all the money you spent putting it the way you want it now, and you have to spend much more money to make everything the way the code officer wants, and also I have to get rid of a lot of stuff that was very expensive to buy, and it's a remarkable situation. And I could tell, I've spoken to the guy on the phone. This is somebody who deals with screaming, angry people every day. I'm not going to be that person. I'm, and if it comes down to it, I'll be like Tom Hanks in The Money Pit, where he
The
asked
money pit, yes.
he asked the guy on the phone, the code officer, what is it going to take? A bribe? Okay, I'll give you a bribe. You know, I'll offer to bribe him. I don't care. What do I have to lose?
You're going to be more subtle than the money pit, I hope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just going to say, you know, I'm just going to show him. I'm going to invite him onto my property because, you know, they actually can't go on your property. He attached it in the complaint. He attached photos that he took from the street and everything.
Right.
So I'm just going to invite him onto the property and to show him that his concerns. What's going on? I'm hearing a lot of weird noises.
I was trying to adjust your noise, not now, but a little earlier. I was trying to adjust your sound, and if I take you out of the echo control, I get a lot of background noise. Let me see.
I have nothing. I have no air conditioners. No.
See, your volume just went up on its own.
Okay. Well,
that works.
All right. Let's give it a try.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, that's California for you. That there's so much going on.
It's Mexifornia.
Yeah. I think I gathered up about 10 pounds of fireworks debris from my neighbors, and there's
never a code inspector for that.
The police, they don't enforce the law. I mean, it's so I'm just not going to be, in the end, I'll do. I mean, I'm not going to stay here. So I'm not going to get into a huge fight.
Yeah, I assume that the code violation is on something on the exterior of the house.
Yes.
Like the carport or something like that.
Well, it's part of the house, and it's been this way since 2021. And from what I read of the law that this guy cited, the code, I'm not violating anything. And I did call City Hall and ask if there was anyone above him. They said no, he's the guy. So it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
I'll give you an example of mine from some years ago. Remember, I had a restaurant at one time, and the restaurant is in an old historic downtown area, in a corner, and there was, for some reason, nobody had outside seating, and I decided to have outside seating. And they had in the city to devise a new rule to accommodate me because they had never contemplated that possibility. And they eventually authorized me the outside seating. As soon as I put a couple of tables in there, I get a visit from the inspector from the ABC, the liquor license, because in order to serve alcohol in those tables, I had to put a physical barrier that separated the tables from the street. So I put some chains, very awful looking chains. And then I went over and got myself some beautiful cedar planters, and I put them around the tables, creating an enclosure with flowers, all kinds of flowers, roses and gardenias, and it looked gorgeous. I mean, people, neighbors would say, "Oh, how beautiful it looks." People would stop to take pictures of the corner all of a sudden. And then I got an inspector from the city that had nothing to do with the people who authorized the area, And he comes up to me and says, your enclosure is in violation of code allocation, blah, 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 and you have to take it off. I said, take it off. Take it the fuck off. I thought you should send me a thank you note for making this stupid downtown more beautiful. She says, no, but it's in violation. What exactly am I violating here? Well, it encroaches onto the street farther than allowed. Okay, so how far am I allowed to go? 48 inches. Good, let's go measure. 48 inches and a quarter.
Oh, so you still have to take it out.
No, I kicked the planters a quarter-inch in. Is now in compliance? Yeah, piss off. Literally, that was the reason. There was no need to take anything out. There were no fix. It was furniture. There was nothing fixed to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I literally, in front of him, kicked the planters 1 inch towards the building, or rather, not even. And all of a sudden, it was in compliance. These people are beyond stupid.
Well, they're bureaucrats, and all they know is the book. We have to do this by the book. And, I have a feeling that I'm going to lose this battle, but it's just another reason for me to get the hell out of this place, because the state has gone insane.
Find wherever you go, find a place with no homeowners association and no town. Find some unincorporated place in suburbia, and you won't have to deal with any of these idiots.
Well, even if I have a homeowners association, I mean, I've been stuck here taking care of plants that I didn't plant, and after seeing how neighbors, when they buy houses, they chop out everything and put it in grass. All these things are going to be dead. 100-year-old rose bushes, grape bushes, avocado trees, all of that. They're all going to die. And I'm sick of weeding. I'm sick of doing all this stuff. I'm not a gardener.
No, you're not. I am. You're not.
Yeah. I mean, gardeners are born. And
see, if you were my neighbor, I'd take care of your garden for free.
Well, I don't know. I just this whole, like the people next door, they took out all their grass and they put down AstroTurf over concrete, and this lasts about a year and a half in the sun here, and then
it rots.
It rots, and they have like all this outdoor, like lawn furniture, but it's all stuff that's been rained on and everything. It's like bamboo and stuffed seating and sofas and all of that. And it just
whatever the fuck happened to cast iron?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
You know that I still have a couple of pieces in my garden that were my grandmother's, and she got her from her father. They're over 100 years old, and they still, all I have to do is hose them down, and they look brand new.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know.
And you can buy these things for nothing. People are throwing them away.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, they're Californians. These are the new Californians, and
the new Californians are the old Zapotecans.
I don't know. It's such a weird era where we're living. It's the Albuquerque paradox, where everybody as a group is doing things that as individuals they all oppose, and I'm very, very, very confident. I know we're not supposed to jinx things. I'm very confident that Trump will be elected.
Wait. If you're going to say that, you have to do an Italian thing.
What?
you take these two fingers from the right hand and grab your left nut.
No, thank you.
And you go like this with your left hand.
No, thank you.
Well, nobody's seeing you, you know.
I'm not
And these will no. It's two fingers. It's, you know, just a little ball in there. And in Italy, that is supposed to get the jinx off.
I don't think it's worked in Italy, given the state that nation has been in for centuries.
Well, maybe they should do it more often.
No, it's.
Oh, that's it. Thomas, I'm sorry. This came in through the chat right now. We can celebrate a victory. Kramer says that Trump has no possibility for victory. That's it. We won. We can go home. That asshole never gets anything right.
Well, also, I mean, who are they kidding? You saw the ad of all the real men who are going to vote for Kamala? They're all actors. They've all been identified. They're all professional actors.
Yeah, and they were actors drafted in a gay bar.
It sure seemed like it.
Because, I mean, come on, take a look at them. It's like, no disparagement here, just the obvious. Geez, they're gayer than Tim Waltz in a football game.
No, the ad went viral because it's so horrific. Everybody's watching.
Yes.
And you know, I don't know, but see, the people running Kamala's campaign, they're a combination of incompetent and then the Judas goats that are working to get Trump elected.
Yes, and a combined IQ of 40.
Exactly. And you know, the latest rumblings is that Trump appeared on the largest. It's the largest syndicated show in the country. It's called the John Cobelt Show, and Cobelt was always anti-Trump. And they had a great interview, and Trump told him that, you know, boy, said talking with you is like therapy. It was great, and so that went over really well. And apparently he's going to go on the Joe Rogan show, and that's going to be another really.
Yeah, it's been announced. It's been announced already.
Oh, okay. So, you know, what does Kamala have? What does Kamala have? She goes on The View and makes a fool of herself. She goes on Colbert.
The View is where she did the best because everybody's so stupid she doesn't stand out.
Well, we the voters, we're all seeing all of this, and you know, they've been reduced to like insulting their own voters. First, they were insulting Trump supporters. Now they're insulting their own voters. They bring Obama out. He said, "I'm here to talk to the brothers." The brothers.
And the brothers are not doing it. You have to do it. The brothers are not doing it. Oh, come on! What an arrogant little freak.
She grew up with y'all. She know what y'all been through. And it's like, are you kidding me? Kamala. What did Kamala say? She used to prepare collard greens in the bathtub. It's like, was this when you were in Montreal and your parents gave you $28,000 as pocket change? Was that when you were making?
No, well, they were actually thrown out of the neighborhood because of the smell of the boiling collard greens in a suburb of Montreal. She's so full of shit. It puts a toilet to shame.
Well, somebody released a list of the 18 most important points in the upcoming election, and like, you know, race relations was like number 17 or something. Climate change was number 15. I mean, everything the Democrats are running on, abortion was way the hell down there. Everything the Democrats are running on, you know, it's at the bottom of the list. So,
and what's at the top? The economy, inflation, immigration, safety. crime, 83% of Americans think that the country is going in the wrong direction. They've been doing that thing for eons. I've never seen in 40 some years that I've been following that poll, I've never seen anything even close. When it's 63%, I think that was the maximum before, it was the kiss of death for the incumbent.
Well, if an incumbent gets anything above, like, say, 45%, they're dead.
83%.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And that goes to something you and I were discussing privately, that I cannot, in my mind, conceive people who will say the country is going in the wrong direction, the economy is shit, illegals. There was this woman, this woman that used to work with Genk Uyghur, that was crying on TV because she was walking the dog and a homeless approached me, grabbed me. He had an erection and he pretended to hump me. And I'm so scared I can't go out anymore.
Was this Anna Kasparian?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the messages on the thing, you're racist. She never said that the guy who did this was black, yellow, or green. The racist is the one who assumed automatically it must have been. Of course. And now she is having those. You know, when these libtards begin to question the whole thing, of course they have to suffer it in their own skin for them to wake up, because they're incapable of reason. So if I tell you, watch out, don't touch this, it's hot, it's gonna burn you, you don't relate the idea unless you touch it and get burnt.
Yeah. There was a great political cartoon recently, and it showed an older guy talking to a younger guy. The younger guy had a giant butter knife, and it was labeled socialism. He was about to stick it to the wall socket. And the older guy said, "You don't want to do that. You're going to get hurt." And the younger guy said, "Well, nobody's ever done this the right way."
Yeah. That kind of thing. But going back to because I digress, the notion that people can say we have a problem with immigration, our streets are not safe, we have Venezuelan and Mexican gangs and Guatemalan and Salvadoran gangs committing all kinds of crimes, rapes, murder, theft. And the country is turned to shit, but I'm going to vote to continue this way.
It's not going to happen.
What kind of process is that?
There are some people, like Californians, who will weep. I remember, what's this guy's name? Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager,
yes.
He was all horrified because all his black conservative friends were going to vote for Obama, knowing full well the damage he was going to do.
Yeah. Colin Powell.
Exactly. Californians, they know damn well that they're voting in disaster after disaster after disaster, but they do it anyway. They don't do it happily or proudly. They do it because it's part of their identity. I saw some American Jewish voter saying all his ancestors were Democrats. How could he vote Republican?
Yeah, 2 generations.
Yeah. But it's like
my great grandfather, they didn't know what a fucking Democrat was.
Well, I don't even know. I know that my parents voted Republican. I don't know what my grandparents voted on either side of the family. And even if I found out that my grandparents were all leftists, that would have no impact on me whatsoever. They all died in 64, 65, 77, and 81. So it has nothing to do with me at all. I'm not.
I hope not. We want you around a little longer.
Well, I can't vote for something that I know is going to bring disaster if it's, if I'm being told I have to appease my dead ancestors. It's like, no, I don't. This is my life.
Yeah, well, you know, your ancestors used to crap in the woods, eat locusts, and rape their neighbors to procreate.
Well,
do we want to go back to that?
Well, think about it.
Honor them?
In the movie From Here to Eternity, there's a scene before Frank Sinatra and Montgomery Clift go out for the night. Frank Sinatra has just come out of the shower. They're in the military. They're in the Marines, I think. Or maybe the Army. I don't know. And Sinatra is standing in front of his locker, and he's throwing handfuls of talcum powder under his armpits, because in those days they didn't have antiperspirants or underarm. So it's Hawaii. Everybody's sweating. They go to a taxi dancing club, and they're all like crammed in together. Everybody stank. The whole place just stank of BO. And am I not supposed to wear, underarm antiperspirant because 70, 80 years ago they didn't have it, and everybody just stink? I mean, come on. It's the dead are no longer with us. We can remember them, but we don't have to live our lives in order to appease the dead, because the dead aren't here anymore.
No, we can occasionally honor the dead, which is what I started today with this image. There we go. 532 years. You know that the results of Columbus's DNA test came out today.
Mm-hmm.
And they were done, first of all, to ensure whether he was indeed buried at the cathedral in Seville or not, because there's been a dispute between Seville and Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic, they have Columbus's tomb, and it's a tourist destination, and they have the tomb of Columbus in the Cathedral of Seville. So what gives? Well, they did DNA analysis with descendants of Colón, and it turns out that indeed the few bones that are still there are his. Just no doubt. Alas, they dissipated all the doubts too. He wasn't from Genoa, he was from Spain. And more, he was a Sephardic Jew.
Yeah. So a lot of hysterical people out there tonight.
Oh, I bet my father would have been celebrating with champagne tonight, because he always told me, since I was a kid, that Colón was Sephardic, that he was a converso. And he even pointed me to letters from Queen Isabella, where she refers to him, obviously not in a letter to him, but to others, as a marrano, which was the word for a converso at the time.
Explain converso.
Converso are the Jews who converted to Catholicism in order to live more or less unmolested, or at least no more molested than the average.
Yeah.
Child.
No, I have a photo of my let's see, these would be 3 great uncles. They all fought in Bleeding, Kansas, and in the Civil War on the Union side. In the Civil War, they were all 3. Boy, that's loud. In the Civil War, all 3 of them ended up being 100% physically disabled. They were all bankers, and in this photo of them, taken late in life, they're the most Jewish-looking guys I've ever seen in my life. They're all wearing, they look like Orthodox Jews. They're all wearing their hats on the back of their head. They're all dressed in black. Their beards, just everything. And I told my mother, I said, these guys, are you sure they weren't Jewish? No, they were Catholics.
Yeah.
They converted to Catholicism.
They converted, and some of them did it. Like even today, there are people who don't give much of a crap about religion, so they change and that's it. Others did with reservations. So many, and there are a couple of books that I can recommend later that speak of Colón's Jewish practices, because apparently he continued to observe certain traditions. Many, if not all, of Colón's crew were Jews who were given the option of expulsion or going with Colón. If you ever wonder what caused people to jump into those nutshells to cross the Atlantic, well, it was the chance of remaining in Spain if they ever made it back. And somebody's asking me about Jewish communities who secretly practice Judaism in the Americas. They're called crypto Jews. And indeed, my wife's family is one of those. They weren't in Central America, there were very few of them, but there were communities in northern Brazil and in the Caribbean. And a few scattered throughout the Americas, trying to pass by. And incidentally, the patron saint of Ecuador, Santa Mariana de Quito, her grandfather was burned at the stake in Toledo by the Inquisition for being a Jew. Isn't that interesting too? So anyway, we have more information about Colón, none of which I find objectionable in the least. On the contrary, it makes me real happy.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Israel is rewriting the entire history of, Jewish people in the Middle East. And you and I were talking about, I think I said to you that if the mullahs, the Iranian mullahs, are to be overthrown, the Iranian people they oppose America doing it for a myriad of reasons, especially now that we've bailed on the Afghans, we bailed on the Iraqis. The Iranians want no part of that. They want the Israelis to do it because they know that, number one, the Israelis are doing it entirely out of self-defense. Number two, they're certainly not going to try and occupy Iran. And number three, they're not going to install a puppet. So the rumblings that I'm hearing are that the Israelis will indeed get rid of the mullahs.
Yes, the decision has been made.
That's what I've heard, and the mullahs know this. That's why they're shuttling their rickety old boss mullah around from bunker to bunker. But it won't matter. They'll get him.
All they're doing is changing the bunker where he's gonna die.
Exactly. And here on our side, we have no leverage over the Israelis. I know we cut off supplies of rifles. We cut off the 2,000-pound bombs, but the Israelis are still using 2,000-pound bombs. Obviously, they're getting them from the Gulf Arabs, because the Gulf Arabs all use the same.
Or Germany.
Or Germany.
Or Germany.
Yeah.
Chancellor Scholz told the Bundestag that we have been sending weapons to Israel, we are sending weapons to Israel, and we will continue to send weapons to Israel because that is the policy of the German government.
Yeah, yeah.
And essentially told the opposition to
Shove it.
fight.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we have no leverage. We have no leverage. It's what did Biden say? Biden was asked recently what he and Netanyahu talked about or something, and he said that Netanyahu offered to come and help with hurricane relief or something incredibly.
Some shit that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, yeah. No, Biden is so overcome with rage that he's just trying to wreck everything on the way out the door. He's definitely trying to wreck Kamala, and I wouldn't put it past him trying to wreck any sort of relationships the U.S. has with other countries that he doesn't particularly like.
They're trying, and Jake Sullivan, that little piece of shit I've been kvetching about for the past 3.5 years. It's now, for instance, he's in deep shit because emails have surfaced that he sent just before the end of Trump's presidency, essentially giving information to the mullahs and telling them to hold on, we're going to free this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Except that now that there is physical proof of his actions that rise up to the level of treason. It's a rather interesting situation. These guys, Blinken, Sullivan, Biden, some of them foaming at the mouth like Biden because they discarded him like a used rubber. Some because they see the end of the Democrats in government as the beginning of a long, protracted nightmare because they will be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt about it this time. Trump tried a nice way in 2017, and we know how it worked. So this time, he's gonna throw the book at them and the library.
You know, you and I have been talking about the Butler assassination attempt on Trump. And what people need to understand, and really what they really need to take home with them, if he hadn't turned his head that degree at that exact moment, he'd be dead.
Look at me, this movement.
Exactly.
That's all it took.
The bullet, it literally went alongside his head in a perfectly straight line. If he had done this, it would have hit the back. It
would have been straight into the cerebellum.
It would have hit in his eye.
I think it was right here.
That's where he was aiming, but he turned his head in exactly the right way. The bullet could zip past the side of his head, skim the side of his head, and clip the top of his ear. So that changes a person. We know that Trump is a preternaturally strong individual, but even that, you don't walk away from something like that without being changed. And like you said, I think he's going to go after everybody who bent the law, broke the law. And I think also he's going to ask for and get a change in virtually everything that was used against him to make sure it can't ever be used against another president.
Yep.
And this is going to mean that a lot of federal bodies are going to lose power or be disbanded, as should happen.
As should happen. You know, I have a long list of uh, departments that shouldn't even freaking exist.
Hmm.
By the way, did you see how he praised Rick Grenell today?
Hmm.
Oh, he sent so many messages to those who have been paying attention.
Hmm.
Uh, People have to listen to the speech he did in California today because he's saying more about what he is going to do in that one speech than he has in the past year. And he's doing it directly and indirectly, both.
If Grinnell is healthy, I see a, a major future for him in the Trump administration.
Yes,
Gr-
absolutely.
Grinnell is another Trump. I've seen Grinnell at press conferences just flat out tell the reporters they're full of crap and they need to ask different questions. He's not. He did that when he was ambassador to Germany. He did that when he was head of the national intelligence.
Trump said how he drove Angela Merkel crazy and she deserved it. She
Yeah,
had to be driven crazy, and he did a great job of doing that.
yeah, yeah.
You know how that started. When the day he arrived in Germany and presented his credentials to Angela Merkel, turned around and went to a ceremony to honor the victims of the Holocaust at
Was it? It was the German. The German. It was the site of a German camp, right?
oh no, yes, of course, but I even remember the wording on top of the gates. Work will make you free. Uh,
Well, okay, that was it. That was Auschwitz.
that was Auschwitz. That's where he went for the.
Dachau. Dachau.
He went then to Dachau. He went to Bergen-Belsen, but the first day he went to Auschwitz, and it drove the Germans nuts. It drove the Germans nuts. It was
Well,
perceived as a kind of slap in the face. And it
well,
was.
it was, but on the other hand, I mean, that whole period is totally unique in history, and it wasn't that long ago. There are still people running around with tattoos on their arms, you know, and
They still are.
it's also unique in that there's so many people who claim that it never happened. Um, and they're guests on Tucker Carlson's show, for example. Um, it's everybody's heard of Auschwitz, but fewer people have heard of, like, say, Treblinka. You know,
Yep.
this is happening all over the place.
Yes.
And what people also don't know is the reason that the Germans, the Nazis, switched to poison gas was that the men who were doing the machine gunning, which is how they did it before the poison gas,
Yes.
they're all breaking down, because even if you're an evil son of a bitch who will do something like that,
You have to be a psychopath not to be affected.
exactly. And these guys were they were all turning into alcoholics, and they were using opium and all of this. And also, you had to march, you had to dig the mass graves, you had to march people to the mass graves, you had to bury them, and it was just faster to cremate them.
Yep.
And
My great grandmother was killed near Brest, and they marched all of the Jews of the Brest ghetto and several others that had been brought to Brest for that purpose. And they marched to this location, and they had digged the trenches, and they shot them into the trenches. Uh, by the time they covered them, some were dead, some were not. It took them 2 days.
yeah,
2 days to kill all of these people. And then they had to cover it up. They had to bury it. Can you imagine an American soldier being ordered to do that, to shoot at unarmed civilians for 2 straight days?
No, and the left always managed to put liars behind microphones. John Kerry and the Winter Soldiers, and then the fake soldiers who claim that they were given orders similar to the Nazi Einsatz group in Iraq, and it didn't happen. But not only that, it wouldn't happen. In the case of the Vietnam War, there was the massacre at My Lai, but what nobody ever talks about is that while the soldiers had been given orders to wipe out this village, soldiers from a different unit were saving the Vietnamese and had been given orders to fire on the men who were doing the killing.
Yep.
And that's what stopped the killing, was that it was announced, we are going to fire on you with machine guns. So you can't, from the massacre at My Lai in Vietnam, you can't paint the entire American armed forces and thereafter the entire American culture.
Absolutely.
The real Americans, the men who represent the United States, were the ones who stopped the massacre.
Who stopped the massacre?
Exactly. And
yeah. And by the way, some American soldiers went berserk in Europe in World War II, and the same thing happened.
Well, when they came across, it may have been, it wasn't Auschwitz because the Russians found that one. Maybe it was
Bergen-Belsen,
maybe.
Dachau is the one, I believe, is the one that Patton spoke of.
Well, there is a claim that the Americans massacred the guards at one of these places, and there's a photo that's up on Wikipedia that claims to show the massacre in progress. It's clearly not a photo that shows the massacre in progress. It shows Americans guarding the Nazis with machine guns. But if you look at the Nazis, some of them, basically, they're just resting on the ground. Some are standing with their arms folded. It's clearly not a massacre. It's not. There's no evidence that this.
No, but there are. You see, I have to make a difference here. Had I been one of the soldiers first on the ground to free these masses of emaciated people with piles of cadavers, how would I react? How would I react towards the people who were doing this? Would I be able to follow discipline? Or would I just put a bullet in their head as I find them?
Well,
I'm not going to judge the people who did it because I don't know if I would have.
Well,
that's different from the planning of a massacre and its commission.
Yeah.
If an Israeli soldier sees the cadaver of a tortured, mutilated hostage and is enraged and shoots the first Hamas hole he finds in the head without asking questions, is that the same as the planning and execution of October 7th? Of course fucking not.
No. What I would recommend to everybody, go on YouTube, and there's a British news series. What the hell is it called? I can't remember what it's called, but it shows Americans taking prisoners on the island of not Iwo Jima. It was one of the Japanese home islands in the south of Japan, Okinawa. They're taking prisoners in Okinawa, and what they did was they dropped messages, and they said, take this card to the American front lines, and it will ensure you safe passage. So there was a Japanese officer, and there were Marines talking to him. He was in the bushes. He was wounded. He had a head wound. They talked to him for 3 hours, and he finally surrendered. He came out with his free pass, and one of the Americans had his rifle, and he put his rifle down, and he went up to the guy, and he put his arm up around the guy's over his shoulder, and the officer put his arm around the neck of the American, and the American was saying, you're all right, and they helped this guy with his big gushing head wound to where he got medical attention. These are the Japanese. These were the Bataan Death March Japanese. These were the take no prisoners Japanese. These were these are some of the worst soldiers in the world. I'm not saying that officer was one of them.
No.
But what matters is that these Marines weren't going to treat this guy the way the Japanese generally treated their own prisoners. And that's what the United States is all about. And
ever since Washington instructed the Revolutionary Army to treat British prisoners as our own.
Yeah.
And it's been like that ever.
Yeah. No.
Does that mean that nobody ever went berserk? Yes, no, they did. But that's not the policy, and that is not the standing order.
All that matters are policies and standing orders. You're not going to prevent 100% of war crimes, because war, especially the type of war that our troops have gone through in the last 20 odd years, it's something that most of us can't even imagine.
And by the way, when one of ours does something like that, we are the ones who punish them before the world even knows.
Well, look at the brouhaha over Abu Ghraib, the worst.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it was a guy had his pee-pee pointed to by a female soldier. They built a naked butt pyramid, and then they stood some guy on what they told him was a car battery, and they made him stand there. And they told him, "You're going to get electrocuted." He wasn't even hooked up to anything.
He wasn't even hooked up to anything. It was.
That's it. They had dogs bark at them.
It was a series of social indignities.
Exactly.
The woman who took pictures of the corpse in ice. It's tasteless, but it's not a war crime, for crying out loud. Yet, people went to jail for years. Their military careers were ended.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about that.
Well, also, it was put out there as if it were worse than the Holocaust.
Yes.
It was ridiculous.
It was worse than what Saddam was doing in Abu Ghraib.
Well, there was a documentary called Voices of Iraq, where they handed out 100 video cameras to average Iraqis and said, film whatever you want. And there was a segment where an Iraqi man with one of these cameras was interviewing his friends, and they all agreed. They all wanted to go to Abu Ghraib, because where else could they get naked in front of an American woman and have her like fondle his dick? So these guys, strangely enough, Iraqis knew that having
if you're lucky enough, she might show you her titties.
Well, they knew that Abu Ghraib under Saddam with professional rapists and acid rain is different than Abu Ghraib under the Americans, where they might make you take off your pants, and a female soldier might go, "Duka, duka, duka, duka." I mean, they weren't children. They were grown men who understood the difference between torture and, as you said, social indignities.
Social indignities. I mean, I know torture.
Yeah,
Trust me.
sure.
Trust me. Pointing at your pee-pee doesn't even make the cut.
No, and okay, let's look at what the hell is it? Guantanamo Bay. They had like a naked CIA officer, a hot naked CIA officer, interview one of the terrorists and give him a
Yes.
lap dance or something. Oh!
It
That's
never
why,
happened to me. It never happened to me.
but see, that's why he wasn't talking.
Right.
That's exactly, it was a dumb
Right.
thing to do. That's
Maybe
why he
should
wasn't
have
talking. Nope, nope, nope. I'm going to
Maybe
need
should
another
have
lap
left
dance if you want to get anything out of me.
God, I would have given anything for that. It's
But it was torture. It was torture. This poor Arab man, he saw a naked American woman, and it was the end of the world for him. No, it wasn't. He liked it. Like most men.
now, if it happens to be Whoopi Goldberg, then I think it's torture, and I think it violates every convention.
Well, if Whoopi tried to give you a lap dance, we'd never find you. You'd disappear without a trace.
I
Where'd
would
you go?
no, I would probably dissolve into thin air. Or what's her name? The pig, Rosie O'Donnell. Can you imagine? Rosie O'Donnell comes in naked and give you a lap dance. I'd rather die.
Well, it's what we need is people in the government saying, look, just,
By the way, sorry, this is a good time to get out of YouTube. So
oh
people
yeah,
in
lap
YouTube,
dances,
yeah.
not fit for advertisers.
People in YouTube, if you want to see the rest of this, come over to Odyssey. You're always welcome here, and you can even participate in the chat. And this is the moment when we otherwise say good night.